Morning everyone. Hi. I'm going to do my best not to trip over the hazard I've just created, and also not stand in front of the screen. So I'm Barney Abercombe. This is Kevin Sontag. You'll presumably all know either one or other of us, or possibly both. We've obviously run a number of online webinars over the past 18 months or so, where actually our sort of non-regional clients have managed to get to know both of us, but so it's good to see you all here. So Kevin and I are going to talk about, for this first session, talk about Sentry, the legacy plans, and the best kept secret that we've got, which is Sentry Cloud. No mention of that yet. So we'd like to look a bit back, look a bit at where we came from, and how it's going, and where we're going. So we cast our mind way back to sort of dawn of time, or perhaps only just the millennium. But around the early 2000s, Sentry was created as a product, and this is an access control product specifically designed for academic libraries, linking to the library management system as a key element of its product feature. In 2009, we released Sentry ISIS, the perhaps unfortunately named Sentry ISIS. Very rapidly, somebody else came along and decided to use the same name. We did send them a strongly worded email, but they refused to desist. But Sentry ISIS brought a large number of improvements to the Sentry platform. Most noticeably, or perhaps most notably, it allowed for networked TACIMs, so TCP/IP TACIMs to be incorporated into the system. And then in 2015, or around 2015, we released Sentry Juno, not just to get rid of the name of ISIS, but also with a total ground-up rebuild of the architecture, and also a refreshed and modernised user interface. So that gets us to now. But we're now looking to the future. We're 2021, nearly 2022, and we need to look to where we're going next with the product.
So with that timeline of Sentry, what is happening now? What is the current install base? What version of software are you guys on? Well, we currently have nobody back on Sentry 11, so the rest of this session is going to be Sentry ISIS onwards. We have 6 customers on Sentry ISIS still, and we have 40 customers on Sentry Juno. So for the next few minutes, we're just going to have a look at some of the architecture of Sentry, how that's evolved through this product range into the product that it is now, just to give you a little bit of background into the product and how it works. So first of all, Sentry ISIS, and we'll start with the architecture drawing on the right-hand side. Sentry ISIS was from the era of sort of Vista and XP, and it had that sort of feel about it. The way it worked was that you would have typically turnstiles. Those turnstiles will have controllers in, so one controller per turnstile. You're probably familiar with the word TACIM, so TACIM is the controller. You'd have 2 of those in a turnstile if it was bidirectional, but we'll ignore that for the time being. One TACIM per turnstile. And you would link those together, you would daisy chain those together in a dedicated private network. So this didn't go on your own infrastructure. This was a cabling that was put in during the installation. And it was RS485 is the name of the protocol. And typically it just ran back to the local desk where it would find its way into a local PC, a client PC. If you had a second library, then you would just do the same again. So you would have another bank of turnstiles, another dedicated private cable arrangement going into another client PC. And those client PCs managed the banks of turnstiles. So whenever someone turns up at a turnstile, it's that client PC which authenticates and tells the turnstile whether to let the person in or tell them to go away. We also, with Sentry ISIS, as Barney mentioned just a moment ago, we introduced TCP/IP TACIMs, so they're the ones on the right-hand side there. So doors, for example, where we didn't want to run cables around an entire building. Doors can sit on your network. And those then were managed by one of these client PCs. One of these client PCs would volunteer to take care of that. So ISIS was built on a very reliable platform. This dedicated network that I've spoken about is very reliable because there's nothing else on it. It's very short, so there's very, very little to go wrong. And also ISIS was built on the back of the previous versions of Sentry. So Sentry 11, you'll be surprised to hear, was not the first version of Sentry. So there's a whole series of software. So it's a very, very stable product. However, the client PC was a problem because it was such a critical part of the product. Any other interaction or disturbance on that PC, and it's a PC sat typically on a reception desk, you'll have shift staff working on that PC. You might have a version of the LMS on that PC which people run inquiries on, or you might simply be running inquiries on Sentry and that type of thing. The software could even be inadvertently turned off, causing chaos. So it's a very, very critical part of the product and a very, very vulnerable part of the product. And it's one of the things that we wanted to address when we developed a new product.
Which was Sentry Juno, as I say, in 2015. Really brought about, as Kevin has said, to address some of the disadvantages that became apparent within Sentry ISIS. So we were looking very much to build on the strengths of ISIS, so continuing to build a really solid and reliable platform, but as I say, to address some of the limitations, if you like, of Sentry ISIS. So you can see straight away here the architecture changed quite significantly. We moved away from having this dedicated client PC that was really the weak point of the system, and we created or developed a number of service applications that could be placed in a protected environment, so on a server. And we further split those down, so rather than having one single service application that did everything, we developed a number of more modular service applications that would handle different aspects of the system, which meant that the load was balanced across the system, performance would be improved, access to things like reports would be improved. It wouldn't slow down the system when, for instance, back office staff wanted to run reports, and they could do that without affecting the speed of throughput at the gates. And also things like our remote support, access to that was improved, because rather than now or in the past where we needed to get remote access directly to that client PC, we could now do that in the background, generally to the server, make changes there, and then roll out a new client application from there. Some further advantages as well was that we were able to bring in options for the SQL database. So originally it was only MySQL that was supported, whereas now it's MySQL and MS Microsoft SQL. And we refreshed the user interface, modernised it, and generally improved aspects there. As with all software, as with everything, time moves on. So that was 2015. Now 2021, and so looking back, we can now see that there are limitations or disadvantages to Juno. The product has grown slightly piecemeal, so it's not necessarily an overall strategy right from the beginning of 2015. We unfortunately at that point didn't foresee a global pandemic coming in 6 years, or 5.5 years time, so we didn't necessarily build in certain aspects of the system. And there's things like limited authentication methods available, which is important to some of the products, and some of the now standards that we have to adhere to. And the prevalence of cloud applications. So some of our customers have moved the server applications or service applications, they have moved into a cloud environment, but it's not a true cloud application. The software has developed in this time, and we've added a whole range of modules to the system, which we'll move on to take a look at now. So we started with Sentry as an access control product. So as we say, handling or managing the control of access through turnstiles at the entrance to your library, doors internally or other areas to your library, and really the related sort of products around that area.
We then developed a room booking system, a better companion product to the access control system, especially given that room booking contains a function to unlock the door and secure the room for you. So room booking involves scanning your ID, authenticating the use and whether you've got a booking and letting you in with a very, very powerful product to access control, and it copies a lot of similar hardware and software. So room booking was a natural progression for us.
And almost no sooner had we, I'd like to say perfected, but got very, very good at keeping people out of libraries that don't have cards. People came to us and said, our students who've forgotten their cards, we want to be able to get them in as well. So we then developed a temporary card kiosk to give a solution to that problem, and to also allow entry to pre-booked visitors, so people can turn up, use the kiosk, authenticate themselves on the kiosk and get a temporary card to gain access to the library.
Study Time is our phone app equivalent of the temporary card kiosk, allowing students to get in through the turnstile without having to take their eyes off of their phone. Analytics is the software utility which is a reporting app, so it complements the existing Sentry reporting module that you have as standard in Sentry, giving you more flexibility and the power to create your own reports and your own graphics.
Vantage, as mentioned, there is an element of cloud support available via Juno, and Vantage is the development to give client or web-based access to the client application. So whilst it's not strictly true cloud architecture, it does enable essentially there to be no local client applications required.
Infinity. Normally with Sentry you have a client PC. It's what is your user interface into the product, and that client application is installable. So Infinity is a web browser version of both the access control client and the room booking client.
And then this brings us to last year's developments, Juno 2020. So in direct response to the pandemic and the needs of libraries to further control access and occupancy levels within the library, we essentially amalgamated some of the controls within the access control product and the room booking product and other elements of the whole product family to give total control over multi-person booking access to the space and individual spaces within that library.
And Onyx is our attendance monitoring product. It uses card ID scanning typically to record attendance, and significantly it authenticates that against expected attendance. And as you can see from the illustration, Onyx is just detached at the moment. It's a completely standalone product.
What you can hopefully see from the illustration here is that there's quite a large product portfolio that builds up the Juno family of products, and it can be fairly complex to understand how they all slot in and what does what within the product family, and therefore what may assist you and what your needs are at the institution. And that also leads on to the amount of software that we are needing to support.
So we have, back on ISIS, we have 33 different software products. We were even struggling with installing ISIS just from one customer to the next, and we found ourselves having a slightly different version of software on consecutive customers. We ended up with 21 different customer clients. Now we managed to fix that a little bit with Juno. So we don't have a slightly different version per client, but still, as per the previous slide where you saw all those products coming in, you still have a significant number of software products, making it difficult to support you, difficult to maintain, difficult to upgrade. So this is something that we were hoping to improve, set a core objective of achieving in the new product, and the expectation for the new product is
Roll.
wait for it. is to get them into one product. basically. One umbrella product, Sentry Cloud, which will remain modular. So we'll still have customers that will have access control and not resource booking. We may have customers that have resource booking and not access control. But it will be one umbrella product, which will make it much easier to install, deploy, and support and upgrade.
Exactly. So, Sentry Cloud, as Kevin said, is going to incorporate all the strengths of what we've built and the experience that we've built with the previous products, wrapping them into one product, Sentry Cloud. This will be a true cloud-based architecture, a total redesign of the architecture from the ground up. It can be hosted either by Telepen in our secure cloud environment, or still retained and to be hosted at the university. If it's hosted by Telepen, that's likely to be in an AWS environment. For our UK customers, it will be hosted in the UK. For our EU customers, it will be hosted in the EU. There'll be a change to the pricing model or the commercial structure, which we'll cover in a bit more detail a little bit later.
And in terms of fully integration, yes, we've already mentioned that the whole thing will come under the umbrella of one product, and that includes everything. So, for example, there'll be a phone app. Now, at the moment, for example, we have a phone app for Juno Buddy, and we have a phone app for Study Time. So that will all be merged into one single product, which again will adapt and start to include more functionality in it as well as we go along. In terms of additional features, I think that the aim at the outset is to get to a version 1 of the product which contains everything that the current product has. So the objective at the start is to be able to upgrade existing customers with a product that contains all that same functionality. Very soon after that, we hope to start rolling out additional functionality and additional features. The sort of thing that we have on the roadmap, on the development plan, will be the use of NFC, which is a wireless technology on your phone. So whereas we have the barcode at the moment on the phone to get people through, we won't need to show that barcode on the screen. We can just get the phone onto the reader and get the person through the turnstile a little bit easier. Payment. So we have come across with resource booking some customers interested in charging the person booking for additional features or facilities, for example in the room, such as AV or even tea and coffee or whatever it might be. So the ability to introduce payment into the product as well. And one of the other things we're being asked a lot about at the moment is authentication. And we've touched on this a little bit in talking about Juno. We're a little bit limited with some of the most modern and most secure methods of authentication at the moment. So where the student is literally signing on to use an app. Going on to Sentry Cloud using the latest development tools will allow us to introduce OAuth 2, if these mean anything to you. I'm going to read them out, they don't mean much to me. OAuth 2, MFA, and SAML, for example, as authentication methods. So, just looking a little bit at what Sentry Cloud is going to offer from a sort of an architecture point of view, and we're going to start on the top left here with access control. We are obviously going to make Sentry Cloud compatible with your existing turnstiles, your existing doors. That is to say, if you are on Juno, the same will apply for any customers still on ISIS. When we were telling you or advising you about the Juno upgrade, we might have been looking at some of your ISIS hardware being in need of upgrade. Those of you on Juno, your hardware is going to be fully compatible with Sentry. So that applies to turnstiles and doors. Room booking and space booking, we're going to merge and start calling resource booking, or we're certainly going to merge. Same applies. It's a bit of a weak distinction in the two existing products. You could, in room booking, have a desk, and you could, in a space booking system, have rooms. it's a bit of a weak distinction, and it's some of the more detailed functionality that's different. So we're just going to merge that into one product, and it will be a lot simpler to use. Attendance is, it's the Onyx product that was detached on the previous slide. So this is all about mapping actual attendance with expected attendance in some way. Possibly not so relevant to libraries, but it'd be interesting to know if any of you run programs or courses where you do have an expected attendance, and in that case something like the attendance module would be useful to you.
And then coming further around, administration and setup. We're going to be doing away completely with the locally installed client application, which will mean that access to the administration areas of the product will be via a web browser, so you'll be able to log on by Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, whichever browser it is that you use, and you'll be able to access the configuration elements of the software. That's right across Sentry, the access control, and also the resource booking element, so you'll be able to change configuration, change parameters, essentially from wherever you are, and as long as you've got internet access, you'll be able to log on and do that. You're no longer restricted necessarily to doing that at your desk on the university network. And similarly, coming around to analytics and reports, you'll be able to access those via your web browser too. And we're looking to further build on the very solid reporting basis that we've built and make it more configurable, build on the dashboards, the graphical elements of it, and hopefully be able to give you a much more granular look at the data that you're collecting. And this will also include obviously a refreshed and modernised user interface, and we're looking to build a really slick bit of software for you to be working with. And that also relates to the student-facing or the customer-facing elements of the software. So things like phone apps, as we said, we're going to roll our two phone apps into one. So students will be able to use a single phone app to access the resource booking and also use their phone as their RD card, university policy willing, if the university is happy for that to go ahead. And likewise, they'll be able to use the web app. This will have a refreshed user interface, again, much more modernised. For things like resource booking, we're looking at a theatre seat style booking system, so students will be able to drill into potentially the building and look at where the rooms are, look at where the seats are, and make their selections there, and hopefully make it a very intuitive piece of software for students to be able to log in. They'll be able to manage their booking from within the software, things like amending times, cancelling their bookings, viewing previous bookings and things like that. So as I say, it's a total ground-up rebuild of the software, building on the absolute strengths of ISIS, Juno and those software packages before that, but putting us in a very solid situation and place to move forward and add further developments in a very structured way into the future, making it better for you because software will work better, but also better for us because we'll be able to manage it, develop it and support it better, and focus on the new features and the developments rather than having our software guys potentially tied up trying to look at a myriad of different software applications and trying to maintain them. So, timeline, where are we at with it? So our aim for Sentry Cloud is essentially to have a full release ready to go or ready to be installed summer 2022, essentially ready to go for the new autumn term in 2022. Prior to that, as you'd expect, we'll be internally alpha testing, and then with some select beta test sites. We'll be looking for volunteers, and we'll be in touch with those of you who might be willing to be involved on that. So leading up to essentially sort of early adopters or first adopters in summer 2022, and then from that point onwards, essentially building the customer base and encouraging our ISIS and Juno customers onto Sentry Cloud, with the aim eventually that we will be essentially looking to essentially have Sentry Cloud as the core product at some point into the future.
So what does this mean for ISIS and Juno in terms of ongoing support? Well, for ISIS, the product was developed a long, long time ago, so actually it is the end for ISIS. We stopped developing on it quite some time ago. In fact, we stopped developing on it prior to Windows 7, so strictly we do not support it on Windows 7. And since XP is no longer supported by Windows, then essentially it's a difficult to support product anyway. We will be bringing support on ISIS to an end very soon once Sentry Cloud is available. We'll obviously be in touch with, and I don't know what the makeup is in this room, but we'll also be in touch with any ISIS customers to talk to them and to manage that and to make sure that they can move on to Sentry Cloud. But ISIS is a very old product and we need to shut it down really. For Juno, Juno's obviously much more recent, and potentially people could have been buying Juno quite recently. So in terms of development, we are going to stop development on Juno imminently. We're obviously looking to put all new features, functionality into Sentry Cloud as we move forward. Obviously, we are continuing to support it, so any bugs that we do need to put the development guys onto will happen, and we will continue to do that for this foreseeable future. I think the aim basically is to work with our customers to identify how quickly they are upgrading to Sentry Cloud. We want to end support on Juno at some point, certainly at a quicker point than where we have stopped support on ISIS. So we want to be a little bit quicker on it, but obviously we're not going to leave you without a solution. We're going to work together with it hopefully and reach a point where we can do that at a suitable time. So if you are on ISIS or Juno, how do you upgrade? Well, if you're on Juno, you're going to have a very straightforward upgrade path to cloud. Those of you that might remember an upgrade from ISIS to Juno, or even from Sentry 11 to ISIS, might be familiar with the fact that we take just a little bit of time to convert your data. So, for example, all your historical transactions, they're just maintained as we move you into cloud. All of your access rights, for example, some of which are pretty complicated, but all of your access rights are just converted over into the new product. So it should be just ready to go, and you won't have lost your historical reporting either. So that's Juno. That's pretty straightforward. If you have ISIS, you might be wondering where we have to upgrade to Juno and then to cloud, but the aim will be to allow you to upgrade straight from ISIS to cloud. Exactly the same applies. So where you wouldn't have transactions, of course, so they'll be maintained, they'll be converted into the new product, access rights, and everything else. Of course, all your configuration and that sort of thing all just gets copied across, so you're good to go.
So let's take a look at the commercial aspects of Sentry Cloud. So we are looking to move to a subscription model for Sentry Cloud. This differs from our historical approach with the software, where essentially it's been a capital investment with a sort of upfront purchase cost and then an ongoing maintenance cost. The subscription model means that we'll be able to roll developments or encapsulate developments in the ongoing subscription price of the software, so there wouldn't be then additional purchase prices or purchase costs for future developments. So whereas in the past, as new developments have come out, things like Juno Buddy or Room Booking, there's been a further initial capital purchase. The subscription model will allow you to add that onto the terms of that subscription model. So this could be monthly, it could be an annual subscription model, and it could certainly be a multiple year agreement. And we understand that different universities have different budgets and budgets work differently, so we're very happy to work closely with you to identify exactly what the pricing model needs to be for your particular budget as Kevin mentioned before, the platform will still continue to be modular, so it won't be a one-size-fits-all. We won't be forcing all of our software onto you and saying you have to use everything. You will be able to still pick and choose which elements of the software. And indeed, the subscription model actually makes that more flexible, so you'll be able to potentially pick up and put down certain aspects of the software that might only be useful to you at certain times of the year. Things like space booking or resource booking might only be really useful to you at exam times when space in the library is at a real premium, so potentially you might want to use it at that point and then not for the rest of the year. Things like that. And again, we'll be very happy to discuss this with you. So the cloud software, it can be hosted by Telepen in the cloud environment or on your customer infrastructure. And again, there'll be a different pricing model depending on that, on where that software is hosted. The ongoing subscription model pricing replaces the software maintenance charge. There wouldn't be an additional charge, but it essentially brings that into it. So essentially, whilst you're paying your software subscription, you will be fully supported for the software and will maintain it. Obviously, bug fixes. It will also entitle you to the latest versions of the software. Thing. We're also obviously aware that some Juno users have only perhaps very recently upgraded to Juno, so perhaps you haven't realised the full value of your investment compared to some who invested earlier on. So obviously we aren't looking to twist anybody's arm and really force anybody to move on sooner than they might want, and we'll be working very closely to ensure that you feel that you're not receiving full value for your investments. Some other aspects or benefits of the subscription model are that we're looking to implement a development request platform, so via our customer portal, which I think some of you have already signed up for. This is where you can access to report any faults to us, you can view the status of ongoing orders, and via that same portal you'll be able to put forward development and enhancement requests. And we're exploring the possibility that might be on a sort of democratic basis, where you'll be able to see the development requests that our other users have put forward, and you'll be able to upload them. So then we can see, that's a particularly desirable development for all our customers. So therefore, that will potentially move to the top of the development plan, that sort of thing. And then we'll be able to make it clear to you how difficult or the timeline for developments. Sort of thing.
So can I just ask one, thinking about it being modular and you pay for the bits you take, would the prices stay the same? Or so if you keep your same bits, would you be paying the same for those bits? Or do you envision a price increase with going to the cloud?
Do you mean the same as you are now?
Yeah.
Well, it's difficult to map that because on existing products you're purchasing the monthly outset, whereas from now on you're on a time-based subscription. So it's very difficult to answer that question, I guess. There was a point in the slide about obviously the subscription does away with your maintenance price, your maintenance charge for software, which we do, I think, is 1,500. So that's built in anyway. Yeah. But I would imagine since there will be a subscription charge, and since you have paid for your software at the moment and you therefore don't have a subscription charge, essentially it's going to be higher. But we've got to try and keep it at about the same level. That's fair.
Yeah, as they've said in the slide, we've got to recognise that initial investment in your software, and where, as an institution, you are in your investment cycle. So if you made an investment in software 20 years ago, then we're probably not going to discount the price that much. But if you bought it 6 months ago, then clearly we can't suddenly come to you and say, right, pay full price for the new subscription model. I mean, our aim is that we want everybody to use this, and we don't want to penalise those that have recently invested. So we're still working on that commercial model. The other benefit, as I see it, is that there are modules and modular pricing. So we will have, if you're investing annually in it, and suddenly halfway through the year you say, actually, I'd like to switch on this module. Well, because you're doing it annually, we will switch that module on, and we will catch up with the pricing. Okay. at the next pricing interval, which could be 6 months down the line. Or if you're smart, a month after you just renewed the subscription, then clearly you're going to get 11 months.
Yeah, key takeaway there.
That's to me, that's one of the benefits to the users of that kind of model, that sort of model.
Thank you.
Something else in relation to just thinking about kind of the modular approach you've taken, which I think is good. Often, especially in bigger institutions, possibly, we're tied into using particular systems that exist either sort of corporately or are held already by other parts of the institutions, such as our IT services, facilities directors and stuff. So if you have a case where take-up of those other modules is not as great as you expected, I would suggest perhaps having conversations with facilities directorates, with IT departments, and kind of related services like that, maybe learning technologies, because it may well be that people in the libraries will be very keen to have them, but are constrained and unable to do so without kind of like awareness being raised around the institution. And obviously, we can advocate for ourselves, but sometimes I think a supplier reaching out does carry a lot of weight as well.
I think that's a really good point actually, and it's something that we've perhaps struggled with in more recent times. We've kind of almost perhaps been a little bit pigeonholed as a library-only provider, and so when we have spoken to the estates or wider the university sort of at large, it's kind of like you do libraries. But so certainly, as Gov mentioned, some of the software names, even where it's study time, that sort of thing, we're kind of moving away a little bit from that to make it a little bit more open. So perhaps it can be used across, or more readily used across the university. And certainly, we're exploring conversations with facilities and estates and